Shrugging off the scandal, the PM insists he's got nothing to hide as the renovation row rumbles on. Boris Johnson faces an official inquiry into who funded the redecoration of his Downing Street flat. But today he remained defiant.
I don't think there's anything to see here.
I think this is getting a bit farcical.
Well, in the latest mischievous twist, Sir Keir Starmer was pictured in John Lewis, the shop apparently scorned by the PM. We have all the latest on the story also tonight. Tributes to the police community officer murdered while walking her dog in Kent. Stop the stink. Residents revolt at the revolting smell from this landfill in Staffordshire. And what a difference a decade makes. The Cambridges celebrate 10 years of marriage.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. The Prime Minister continued to brush off the investigations into his conduct today, insisting he has done nothing wrong. Flanked by his Chancellor during a pre-election visit to a school, Boris Johnson said what people wanted to see most was the successful vaccine rollout and the end of lockdown. Here's our political reporter, Shihab Khan.
You've got lots of good stuff here, Rishi.
When the pressure's on and things are tough, you should always be able to rely on your neighbours for support. With questions mounting about the refurbishment of the Prime Minister's flat, the two men who live in Downing Street took a trip to a London school to move the focus elsewhere. But the Prime Minister still won't tell us all the details about how he paid for the renovations.
I don't think there's anything to see here or to worry about. But what we are doing is focusing on the stuff that really matters.
But what do those at a nearby market think of the whole thing?
I'm not that bothered about Boris Johnson's taste in furniture and whether he likes John Lewis's or what. The problem is not being honest about how he paid for it.
Are you concerned about the investigations into Boris Johnson?
Not really. Not really. I guess it's just one of those perks.
There's a lot of families that went without, and wallpaper would have been the last thing on their mind.
There are now 3 inquiries into the renovations at the Downing Street flat. One by the Cabinet Secretary Simon Case, another by the new Ministerial Standards Advisor Lord Geidt. The Prime Minister will decide if he wants to listen to the conclusions of those. The third, however, is an independent probe by the Electoral Commission. It's looking into Tory party donations and has the power to question Boris Johnson and his fiancée, Carrie Symonds. It can also demand the paper trail from Conservative HQ. And if it finds any wrongdoing, it can issue fines, investigate the Prime Minister personally, and even pass on files to the police.
This is an entirely independent body with serious investigatory powers, investigating under the auspices of the law. The Commission's job is to regulate the financial activities of the most powerful people in the country.
But the Prime Minister's opponents think the investigations could easily be avoided.
I think this is getting a bit farcical. I think the Prime Minister could actually deal with this very, very quickly. All he's got to do is answer a very simple question, which is who paid initially for the redecoration of your flat?
Farcical, he says, but then in a tongue-in-cheek moment, he paid a visit to John Lewis after allegations the Prime Minister redecorated because he didn't approve of the shop's furniture.
If there's one thing I object to in this whole farrago of nonsense, is to have anything. I love John Lewis.
It's a story that's rumbled on for some time and is likely to keep cropping up until all the remaining questions have been answered.
Well, Shihab, exactly a week to go until the elections. What impact could this row have, do you think?
That's the big question, and it's actually one that I've been asking Conservative politicians for the last few days, and everyone that I speak to seems to think it's not having that much of an impact. They say when they're on the doorstep, they're not hearing about this too often. The latest polling from YouGov would suggest that's probably the case. The Conservatives remain unchanged. They still have a healthy lead. Their position hasn't moved much. But you heard in that report that there are plenty of people, especially during times of economic uncertainty, who are concerned by this. And the longer this story goes on, the more chance there is that it might start to cut through.
OK, Shihab Khan in Downing Street, thank you. Now, the family of a police community support officer who was found murdered in Woodland have described her as a lovely person. The body of 53-year-old Julia James was discovered on Tuesday. It's thought she'd been out walking her dog at the time. From the scene, Rebecca Barry has the latest.
Julia James was committed to protecting others, a police community support officer. But now her colleagues are investigating her murder. Her relatives left in shock.
Absolutely devastated. So, you know, it's I'm sorry, but it's just devastated our complete family. It's just an awful thing to happen on your doorstep.
The 53-year-old's body was found here in Snowdown in Kent on Tuesday afternoon. She'd been walking her dog just a few hundred metres from her home. Forensics teams are now searching fields and woodland, this usually quiet village, now a major crime scene.
This is also Julia's home force, so her colleagues and her friends in the force are, will need much support as well right now too. We need to let the police get on and do their investigation. This is tragic beyond words.
This is where Julia would have walked on Tuesday afternoon. This cut-through is just metres from her home, and neighbours say she regularly took this route when walking her dog. But on that day, she never returned.
She used to tell me about her work and how much she loved it.
What did she say about her work?
It's that she loved it, helping the community, and she couldn't, she always used to talk about that she can't wait to advance to an actual police officer.
She was always happy, she's smiling all the time. I was really sad what happened to her.
Police have not yet made any arrests.
I pray to God they do, and very, very quickly. Nothing's going to make you feel better, but you will, in one respect, feel a bit more at ease and comfort that they've got whoever's done this dreadful thing.
This small community shaken. Well, there are still many police vehicles here tonight as officers continue to search the area. A woman murdered in broad daylight in a usually quiet and peaceful area of Kent is shocking. The fact that she was clearly a much liked, dedicated police community support officer makes it all the more so. Police are appealing for anyone with information to come forward, and we expect to hear a further update from them tomorrow.
Rebecca Barry in Kent, thank you. Moving on now in India, where the country's dire COVID crisis has worsened, with the world's highest ever number of new infections reported today. There are nearly 380,000 new cases. But those numbers alone don't reveal the full story. ITV News has spoken to desperate doctors struggling to cope and heard their harrowing first-hand accounts. Our correspondent John Ray reports.
A doctor, exhausted and beaten by COVID. So too an entire health service. We are inside a public hospital in Delhi, the capital of a wealthy nation, where among the many medicines and remedies in short supply is hope.
We all are fighting a war and we are all a part of it.
We asked those closest to the crisis to keep a diary. Theirs are terrifying testimonies.
The world around us is filled with grief. News of lack of oxygen, lack of beds, lack of medications, lack of a proper place to give a good funeral to your loved ones. It's tragic.
It is very painful to really see the patients dying, young and old, all are dying. And really it is causing a lot of trouble, a lot of mental torture to us.
I at least try to sit at their bedside, making them, making it a little easier for them to pass away with someone next to them.
To the parent or a partner of a 32-year-old man or a woman that their partner, their child is no more is a pain that's really numbing.
And everyone is very scared. Even doctors are feeling very helpless. Being a doctor, I am feeling helpless seriously.
And for every patient who secures a bed, there are many, like Mustafa Ansari, who suffer at home. He's now stuck outside a hospital in Patna, guarded by police who turn people away. His nephew tells us they've driven 40 miles. We've been here for 2 hours, he says. No doctor has come. I don't know what to do or where else to go. In Mumbai, an emergency hospital that closed after the first wave has reopened. More than 2,000 beds. It's a vast facility, yet it is dwarfed by the scale of the need.
There is death everywhere. The patients and the doctors treating them, we both feel the system has abandoned us.
And Dr. Siddharth Tara ending John Ray's report there. Here, residents living near a landfill site in North Staffordshire say they fear for their long-term health. The situation has worsened in recent months with thousands of complaints about the smell of gas. Now, locals have started a Stop the Stink campaign with their MP, saying it was an environmental disaster and calling for urgent action. Ben Chapman has more.
No matter how thick the wall, how high the garden fence, it is impossible to hide. The unbearable stench from this landfill site that hangs over this town, causing headaches, nausea and dizziness for those living nearby. At times it's forced some, like Susie, to move out.
They quite often will wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning coughing, feeling sick. The kids will wake up at that time and they won't go back to sleep again. It affects your children being able to play outside in the garden, so we're all sort of trapped in the house.
Residents have begun protesting and the Environment Agency's now received thousands of complaints. What people here are smelling is a gas called hydrogen sulfide, and it is strong and it is unpleasant, like a cross between rotten eggs and a gas leak. At the beginning of March, the Environment Agency detected levels of the gas that were far higher than the limits set by the World Health Organization. Some residents have begun taping up their doors and windows to try to keep it out.
And we're really concerned that breathing this hydrogen sulfide in constantly every night is going to affect our physical health in the long term, and mentally, you know, it's really destroying our well-being.
The levels of gas have dropped since the company running it was told to start covering up parts of the site. And Public Health England says it's unlikely to cause serious problems. But this local GP says the effect on his patient's mental health isn't trivial.
They feel the public health bodies and the Environment Agency have been really slow to react. They've almost been fobbed off with saying, oh, it's mild to moderate issues, it's not going to kill you. But the effect on many, many people's quality of life has been horrendous.
The owner, Red Industries, says it's on track to meet a deadline for capping and other improvements tomorrow. But residents, many of whom have been here longer than the landfill site, believe the only way to stop the stink is to stop the rubbish from being brought here at all. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Newcastle-under-Lyme.
Still to come, the ITV Evening News, a new study to help patients suffering the cruel effects of long COVID. Plus, the Cambridges crown 10 years of marriage, releasing a unique family video. Those stories and more after the break. Join me then. Hello and welcome back. Treatments to lessen the often devastating impact of long-term COVID are being explored in a new UK-wide trial. Heal COVID hopes to reduce the high number of patients who die in the months after a stay in hospital, and also those who return with complications. In January, our health editor Emily Morgan filmed with Rob Orton, who was left so sick after COVID he could only communicate with a whiteboard, and 3 months later he's still not fully recovered.
Hey Rob, you ready to go for a walk? Excellent. Right, we'll just get your oxygen sorted. Off we go. That's it. Try and keep your head up if you can. That's it. Look ahead.
He is not an elderly man, nor is he in the last days of his life. Rob Orton is a 48-year-old invalid, ravaged so badly by a virus, he's had to learn to walk and talk again.
Rob, this is amazing.
Thank you.
Look at you. How are you feeling?
I'm good, thank you.
Are you pleased with his progress?
You can't say how pleased I am. My whole team is the whole of intensive care.
I met Rob in intensive care. He had a tracheotomy, having just come off a ventilator. COVID kept him there for 5 months.
What do you miss most?
The disease has left him with very damaged lungs. He's had numerous infections and still can't eat.
We'll get the stomach nurse to come and have a look. We'll change the dressing.
The road to recovery is complicated.
Do you think life will ever be normal, whatever that is, again?
No. Not compared to what it was before, no. The doctors were saying you'd be on the ventilator for 3 days, you'd be home in a week's time. 6 months down the trot, I'm still here. So nobody, even the doctors, the professionals, nobody knows where this disease could lead.
For many, it leads straight back into hospital. ONS data suggests 29% of patients hospitalised with COVID are readmitted within 6 months. 12% die within the same period. 2 drugs, a blood thinner, a Pixaban and a statin, atorvastatin, will be trialled on patients to help cut those figures. But everything right now is experimental.
When you look at the myriad of symptoms that people present with, it can be, it's quite varied, from very, very minor things to being significantly disabled. And obviously these patients will come back and need more help.
And of course, we're sort of only just beginning to see the effect of that.
Absolutely.
William, can you get the milk up for me, please?
This is Rob's beloved family he so misses. Home life has had to continue. He will be part of that very soon, but their future is uncertain.
It's not just a case of catch COVID, go to hospital, get better, go home. It doesn't work like that. There's scarring on his lungs, so that's going to affect his chest for the rest of his life. He can't eat, so he's peg fed. And wherever you've got a hole in the body, that's a possible infection.
Neither Rob nor his wife were expecting his physical or mental recovery to take so long, but both are determined not to let his demons beat him. Emily Morgan, ITV News in Watford.
West Midlands Police have released CCTV of a woman they want to speak to after a newborn baby was found abandoned in a park. The baby boy was found in Kings Norton in Birmingham last week and has been named George by hospital staff. The CCTV shows a woman who police think may have vital information. Now, it's not just holidays many of us are desperate for this summer. Music lovers are also going to be hoping that festivals are allowed to return. And this Sunday sees the first trial of a gig attended by thousands without masks or social distancing. Our arts editor Nina Nana was invited behind the scenes of what many hope will see live music return for good.
On this vast Victorian park in Liverpool rest the hopes of British festival goers. Could the event being staged here on Sunday lead to live music's big comeback?
I'm gonna be okay, don't worry, 'cause I know you.
The Liverpudlian singer who will be first on stage at Sefton Park is simply overwhelmed at the prospect.
I'm worried I'm going to cry. I'm worried I'm just going to cry for the first 5 minutes, but I'm going to try not to and just keep it together, but it's going to be super emotional.
There is some optimism. Organisers of this concert in Barcelona last month say it resulted in no significant COVID outbreak afterwards. Before the pandemic, in Britain, live music was a booming billion-pound industry. Now it's hoped by testing fans before they arrive and asking them to do the same afterwards, events can restart. So there'll be 5,000 fans in Liverpool on Sunday, but like in Barcelona, they won't be wearing masks.
So the stage is being built and this venue is getting ready to receive thousands of fans. And the significance of this event is that the organisers intend it to be exactly like the real deal.
This will be an audience that will be going for it as though coronavirus had never happened. They'll be singing, they'll be dancing, they'll be having pints of beer, they'll be jumping up and down, they'll be moshing, they'll be coming over the barrier. And that's what we want them to do. We want them to behave without restriction.
The headline act, Blossoms, had their tour postponed last year. Now they are relieved to have a concert to rehearse for.
I think it's an important step to getting live music back on its feet. So
Weirdly, that was like an afterthought, wasn't it? Like getting asked to do it, we were like, yes, what, do a gig, what? And then afterwards, sort of step back and oh God, it's going to be quite like...
Yeah, it's only as we've approached and got closer
Yeah.
and we're speaking to people, it's like, are you nervous? Like, it's a big monumentous occasion and you're like, oh yeah, we were just looking forward to playing live.
Many will be waiting and watching to see if British festivals can indeed flourish again. Nina Nana, ITV News in Liverpool.
And finally, this time 10 years ago, the country was celebrating the royal wedding of Prince William and Kate Middleton. Well, they have been, of course, pretty busy since then with royal duties and also producing 3 children. And to mark their anniversary, they have released a touching family video, as our royal editor Chris Shipp now reports.
On a beach close to their Norfolk home, it is an intimate and close-up family video. It is extremely rare for the royals to allow a glimpse into their private family time such as this, where Louis and big sister Charlotte are playing together, or they're being chased around the garden. But William and Kate decided to share this film this afternoon as a thank you on the day they celebrate 10 years of marriage. On the 29th of April 2011, the country was given a public holiday to join the wedding celebrations of Prince William and the then Catherine Middleton. A lot has happened to this family in the last decade, of course, but today the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge wrote they were enormously grateful for the 10 years of support they have been given. The traditional gift for a 10th wedding anniversary is tin, but while William and Kate did share their family video, they did not share whether they gifted any tin to one another to celebrate. Chris Shipp, ITV News.
And that's all for now. Tom's here with news at 10, but from me and all the team here, bye-bye.